All right, ready to dive deep. Today,
Right.
we're looking at India's education system, and I've got to say, this stuff is like gold for you UPSC aspirants out there.
Oh, absolutely. Especially with this new data from the Unified District Information System for Education Plus.
UDISE Plus.
Yeah, UDISE Plus. It's massive, one of the largest educational databases in the world.
Huge. Covers millions of students, schools, the whole picture.
Exactly, a real deep dive.
And, this data, it's practically guaranteed to show up in your mains exam, maybe even prelims.
Oh, for sure. Think of this deep dive as like your secret weapon.
That's what we're going for here, giving you those insights you need to ace those exams.
Exactly. So, should we jump right in?
Let's do it. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with some good news. The latest UDISE Plus data shows a pretty significant drop in the number of single-teacher schools across India.
Really? That's great to hear. Fewer single-teacher schools, that has to mean more students are getting a better quality education, right?
Well, you'd think so, right? In 2022-23, there were 118,190 single-teacher schools.
Okay.
Now, fast forward to 2023-24. That number has decreased to 110,971.
Wow, that's a pretty good drop.
It is. But here's the thing. While the number of these schools has gone down, student enrollment in those schools, it's decreased too.
That is interesting.
All right.
I wonder what's driving that. Are families maybe moving to areas with more, I don't know, better equipped schools? Or maybe smaller schools are merging with larger ones?
Those are excellent possibilities.
Curly?
Yeah, and it's definitely something worth thinking about, especially for those UPSC essays where you're analyzing the socioeconomic factors that influence education,
Oh, for sure. Those connections are key.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of school numbers, there's another trend popping up, and it's a little bit concerning. The rise of zero enrollment schools.
Wait, zero enrollment? You mean schools with no students? How is that even possible?
Well, the number of these schools has actually jumped from 10,294 in 2022-23 to 12,954 in 2023-24.
Whoa, that's a pretty significant jump.
It is. Now, it's possible that some of these schools are just waiting for new batches of students to come in.
Right. Or maybe they're located in areas that are experiencing demographic shifts, maybe fewer school-aged children.
That makes sense.
But the point is, if enrollments don't pick up, these schools, they risk being shut down permanently.
Yeah, that would be a real shame, especially for those communities who rely on them. It makes you think about the long-term impact, resource allocation, planning, all of that.
It really does. And it's definitely something policymakers will need to keep an eye on. But speaking of things that policymakers need to think about, let's shift gears a bit and talk about school infrastructure.
Yeah, that's crucial because a school needs more than just teachers to be effective, right? It's like a whole ecosystem.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this is where the UDISE Plus data gets really interesting, really eye-opening. For example, did you know that a surprising number of schools in India still lack a functional power supply?
Really? That's surprising. How many are we talking about?
Get this, 1.52 lakh schools still don't have electricity.
1.52 lakh.
Seriously.
Yeah. Imagine trying to learn in a classroom with no lights or fans, especially in a country like India where the heat can be, well, intense.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how difficult that would be. It's going to be a huge challenge for both the students and the teachers.
It really is, and it just highlights the huge disparity between government and private schools. The vast majority of schools without electricity, they're government-run.
Makes sense, but it's still a little disheartening. What about things like access to clean drinking water?
Oh, that's another essential one. And guess what? The data shows that while a lot of schools claim to have drinking water facilities, only a slightly smaller number actually have those facilities working properly.
So there's a gap between what's on paper and what's actually available to the students.
Exactly. We see the same pattern with toilets.
Really?
Yep. Out of the 14.71 lakh schools that report having toilets, only 14.04 lakh have toilets that are actually, functional.
Wow, that's crazy. You could totally write a whole UPSC essay about this, the impact on student health, hygiene, especially for girls. It's a big deal.
Oh, absolutely. This is textbook UPSC, material access, equity, meeting basic needs. It's all right here in this data.
It's like a roadmap for understanding these complexities.
It really is. And speaking of access and equity, have you thought about the challenges faced by students with disabilities?
Oh, that's a good point. Accessibility is so important, but it often gets overlooked, unfortunately. What does the UDISE Plus data say about that?
Well, the numbers are pretty startling. Only about 33.2% of government schools have toilets that are actually accessible to students with disabilities.
That's it.
And even then, only about 30.6% of those accessible toilets are actually in working order.
Oh, wow, that's incredibly low.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that in this day and age, we're still struggling to ensure that all students have equal access to education.
And it's not just about toilets either when it comes to ramps, to help students with mobility issues.
Yeah.
Well, while a good chunk of schools have ramps, only about half of them have those ramps with handrails, which makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's a big safety issue. It seems like we're seeing a real pattern here. These basic necessities, things that most of us take for granted, they're just missing in a significant number of Indian schools.
You've hit the nail on the head. And it's not just about comfort, it's about creating an inclusive learning environment for every student. It's about equity.
Right, it underscores the need for continuous investment in school infrastructure, especially for those government schools that are lagging behind. But let's move beyond the basics for a minute. What about those resources that can really take a student's learning experience to the next level?
Ah, you're talking about things like technology, arts and crafts, science labs,
Yeah.
the good stuff, right?
Exactly. A good education is about more than just memorizing facts and formulas. It's about fostering creativity, encouraging exploration, and getting those kids ready for a future that's increasingly driven by technology.
Couldn't agree more. But, well, the UDISE Plus data throws us a bit of a curveball here.
Ooh, how so?
Well, it turns out that a whopping 50% of schools in India don't have access to functional computers for teaching.
50%. Seriously. In this digital age? That's almost unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, how are these students supposed to compete in a global job market without even basic computer skills?
It's a huge concern, and it just feeds into that digital divide we were talking about earlier. Students without access to computers, they're already starting at a huge disadvantage.
Absolutely. And it's not just about technology either, is it?
Right. Only about 17.5% of schools have dedicated art and craft rooms.
Really? That's such a shame because those subjects are so important for nurturing creativity, imagination,
Yeah.
Thinking outside the box.
It's all part of holistic development, Not just focusing on academics, but on those well-rounded individuals.
I completely agree. And speaking of holistic development, what about science labs? Are they up to par?
Well, you'd think that science labs would be a top priority, especially for students who are thinking about careers in STEM fields, right?
Makes
But get this. Only 1.6 lakh out of 2.86 lakh schools with secondary sections have integrated science labs.
Hold on, less than half. That's pretty alarming. Without proper science labs, students are missing out on those hands-on experiments, that excitement of discovery.
Right. It makes you wonder how many potential scientists and engineers we might be missing out on simply because they didn't have the resources to explore their interests. It's like we're seeing two different pictures of India's education system.
I know what you mean. It's
Yeah.
like on one hand, there's progress, there's potential, but on the other hand, these persistent challenges, they're holding students back.
Exactly. And it just goes to show that to really grasp these issues, you need a nuanced perspective. There's no quick fix, but by recognizing these challenges, we can start to brainstorm solutions.
And that's what the deep dive is all about, looking at the data, unpacking those complexities, and hopefully sparking some aha moments for our listeners.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Hmm.
Now, before we move on, there's one last little nugget from the UDISE Plus data that I think is worth mentioning, especially for you UPSC folks out there.
Yeah.
And it has to do with solar energy in schools. Oh, okay, I'm all ears. Solar energy seems like a perfect fit for a country like India. So much sunshine.
Right. It's a win-win. You save money on electricity bills, and it's great for the environment.
Totally. So what's the catch?
Well, only 10.5% of schools in India have actually installed solar energy systems.
Hey, seriously, only 10.5%? That's incredibly low. What's holding them back? The benefits are so clear.
Well, there are a few potential roadblocks.
Like what?
Funding is a big one, always a challenge.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And there might be a lack of awareness about the long-term benefits of going solar. Plus, let's be real, installing solar panels, it can be a complicated process.
True, but it still seems like a massive missed opportunity. Think of all the money schools could save, the environmental impact, even the educational possibilities. Imagine students learning about renewable energy right there in their own schoolyard.
It's a fantastic idea. And hey, who knows? This could even pop up as a topic on your UPSC Mains exam, the role of solar energy in transforming India's education system. Oh, totally. It's all connected. And that's just scratching the surface. We'll be back in a jiffy to dig even deeper into these trends and what they mean for India's future.
It's funny, we were just talking about solar energy in schools and how it seems like such a no-brainer,
I know, right?
but for some reason, it just hasn't really caught on.
It really makes you think, about all the things that look good on paper.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to actually putting them into practice,
Yeah.
it's a whole different story.
Oh, absolutely. And, for all you UPSC aspirants out there, that's a key takeaway.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Thinking about sustainable development and how policies sometimes struggle to, actually get implemented.
Exactly. Like this disconnect between the potential of something like solar energy and then the reality on the ground.
Totally. And it's not just solar energy. We've been looking at a whole range of issues today, all pulled from this latest UDISE Plus data.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
And remember, this data, it's a goldmine for you UPSC folks.
Oh, absolutely. It's packed with those insights you need.
Exactly. Insights into the state of India's education system and the perfect ammo for those well-informed arguments in your exams.
Couldn't agree more. So let's do a quick recap, shall we?
Yeah, why not?
We started off with that encouraging drop in the number of single-teacher schools.
Yeah, that was good news.
But then we got into that puzzling increase in zero enrollment schools.
Right.
And then, of course, there's the whole issue of basic amenities, electricity, clean drinking water, toilets that actually work, facilities for students with disabilities.
Essentials.
And the data shows a pretty different reality for a lot of schools out there, especially those government-run ones.
It does. It does. And then on top of that, we've got the lack of resources, like computers,
Ugh, don't even get me started.
arts and crafts supplies, proper science labs, the stuff that can really make a difference.
The things that can make education come alive,
Exactly.
So UPSC peeps, listen up.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about how all of these pieces fit together. We're talking about access, equity, the quality of education, the role of government policy in tackling these issues. This is all prime essay material.
Oh, yeah, for sure. This is like hitting all the major themes.
It's like a crash course in the Indian education system, all wrapped up in this UDISE Plus data.
And don't forget the bigger picture.
Oh, right. Always got to zoom out.
What are those socioeconomic factors behind these trends? What historical challenges has India's education system faced? How does all of this connect to those broader themes of development and progress?
That's what they're looking for in those UPSC exams, right? That ability to not just know the facts, but to analyze, to connect those dots, to form your own arguments.
You got it. So when you're heading those books, keep this UDISE Plus data in mind.
Like a secret weapon.
Exactly. It's a powerful tool for understanding just how complex India's education landscape really is.
It really is. And speaking of getting those brains working, I want to leave our listeners with a couple of thought-provoking questions.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Okay, so think about this. What specific policy initiatives could actually make a difference in addressing the challenges that this UDISE Plus data highlights? And how do we bridge that gap between policy and actually making it happen on the ground?
Yeah.
How do we make sure India's students have a brighter future?
Man, those are the million-dollar questions.
Right.
And they're not just for UPSC aspirants either.
You're right, they're for all of us.
They're questions that every citizen who cares about the future of education in this country should be asking.
Because at the end of the day, the future of India's education system, it affects all of us.
It does. It does. It's about nurturing the next generation of thinkers, innovators, and leaders who are going to shape this nation's destiny.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself.
And on that note, I want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you all.
We've covered a lot, but trust me, we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to uncover. As we're wrapping up this deep dive into India's education system, I keep thinking about all this data and how much more meaningful it becomes when we connect it to, the bigger picture.
Oh, absolutely. Remember those questions we left everyone with about those policies and how to actually implement them. Well, those are the kinds of connections that can really take your understanding to the next level.
Exactly. It's not just about knowing the facts. It's about being able to really analyze them, which is, crucial for those UPSC exams.
Oh, for sure. So for all those UPSC folks out there, let's break it down how this UDISE Plus data can be your secret weapon.
Love it.
Imagine you're tackling an essay question about bridging the digital divide in India.
Okay, yeah.
You could just say, hey, 50% of schools don't have working computers, right?
Right, straight from the data.
But what if you took it a step further?
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Instead of just stating the statistic, weave it into a bigger story. Talk about how that lack of access to technology, it fuels inequality, it limits opportunities, it holds India back on the global stage.
Now you're talking. That's how you turn data into a powerful argument.
Exactly. You're not just reciting facts, you're showing a deep understanding of the issues.
That's what those examiners are looking for.
And it's not just for essays either. Think about the interview stage.
Oh, yeah, the dreaded interview.
Imagine they ask you about solutions to those infrastructure problems in government schools.
I can picture it now, sitting there, sweating it out.
But instead of giving some vague answer, you confidently drop those UDISE plus stats, the number of schools without electricity, the percentage of broken toilets, and then you use that data to advocate for specific policies, increase funding, real change.
That's what I'm talking about. You're not just talking the talk, you're showing them you've done your research.
Right. You're prepared, you're passionate, you're ready to tackle those tough challenges.
Okay.
And remember, those UPSC exams, they're not just about testing your knowledge, they're about finding those future leaders.
The ones who can analyze, come up with solutions, actually make a difference.
Precisely. So to all those aspiring civil servants out there, remember, this knowledge isn't just about passing an exam, it's about equipping yourselves to build a better India.
Well said. And with that, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
We've covered a lot of ground today, the good, the bad, but one thing's for sure, India's education system is a complex beast.
It really is. And understanding it, well, that's not just important for UPSC exams, it's important for all of us.
Absolutely.
So keep asking those tough questions, keep digging into that data, keep diving deep into the issues that matter.
And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you subscribe to the deep dive for more insightful explorations. The stuff that really gets those brain cells firing.
And if you learned something new today, spread the word. Share this episode, keep that conversation going.
Let's keep those minds engaged.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this journey of discovery. Until next time, keep learning.